the hidden pact between the Church and the Templars finally revealed. In the dim frontier where history and silence collide, a forbidden truth begins to pulse with the weight of centuries, rising from beneath layers of fear, censorship, and deliberate erasure. Imagine stepping into a hidden chamber beneath the Vatican archive, so secret that even its existence is denied, where the air smells of iron, dust, and parchment older than the cathedrals above it. In this vault, chained manuscripts and sealed scrolls reveal the first traces of an unthinkable alliance, a clandestine pact forged between the Church and the Knights Templar. Created not in the light of sanctified halls but in the shadows of necessity, ambition, and mutual power. This alliance, buried in coded documents and disguised behind centuries of propaganda, exposes a truth that was never meant for public eyes, a truth capable of rearranging everything we believed about the medieval world, about spiritual authority, and about the forces that shaped an era governed by secrecy. And as the darkness of this vault tightens around you, every whisper of hidden history demands you confront a revelation heavy enough to fracture the official narrative. Rome labored to protect as you advance through the corridors of this forbidden past. Every step echoes like a summons, pressing you deeper into the reality behind the alliance. The Church publicly, the supreme guardian of spiritual authority, quietly relied on the Templars' unmatched discipline, financial dominance, and access to forbidden knowledge to maintain its power. The pact they forged was invisible to monarchs, concealed from the faithful, and never spoken aloud beyond sealed chambers lit by flickering oil lamps. In this mutual shadow, the Templars became the hands that executed Rome's will across continents, securing routes the Church could not reach, negotiating with enemies the papacy could not confront, and managing treasures the Vatican could never openly acknowledge. Rome provided legitimacy, the Templars provided force. But as their influence grew, the alliance began to shift, slowly revealing its fatal imbalance. The Templars gathered knowledge the Church could not control, acquired wealth it could not track, and commanded loyalty stronger than any clerical decree. What began as cooperation evolved into a dangerous symbiosis, one in which Rome increasingly feared the very order it had empowered. Then the fractures begin to spread. Kings grow suspicious of how the Church maintains its dominance. Chroniclers note inconsistencies in papal decisions. Merchants whisper about Templar treasuries containing wealth no crown could rival. And in each rumor, Rome hears the echo of a truth it once tried to hide. The Templars know too much. They possess coded archives documenting the alliance, manuscripts questioning doctrine, and secret correspondences that could expose the Church's dependency to the world. Fear becomes strategy. Rome plots quietly, weaving accusations of heresy, inventing forbidden rites, and preparing an extermination masked as purification. But the Templars, disciplined and bound by their own silent code, refuse to break. Fires ignite in Paris, inquisitorial trials spread like disease, and documents vanish in conveniently timed blazes, all orchestrated to destroy not only the order, but every trace of the pact. Yet fragments survive, hidden scrolls, encrypted testimony, symbols carved into stone, each one whispering a sliver of the truth the Vatican hoped would vanish forever. By the final breath of this revelation, one truth settles with the weight of ancient stone. The fall of the Knights Templar was not a righteous act, it was a cover-up. Rome was not defending holiness, it was defending itself from the consequences of an alliance it created, benefited from, and ultimately feared. The Church needed a scapegoat, a fire to erase the evidence, a narrative strong enough to overwrite the truth. And now, centuries later, as the shadows of this forbidden pact rise once more, you stand before the truth the Vatican never wanted to face. The Templars were not merely warriors. They were partners in a secret power structure, erased only when they became too powerful to control. This is where the silence ends. This is where the buried truth returns. And this is where the story the Church tried to destroy forces its way back through the cracks of time, demanding to be heard. In the silent depths of medieval history, where forgotten corridors still echo with the weight of untold truths, the shadows surrounding the Knights Templar begin to stir with a force that feels both ancient and dangerously alive. Imagine walking through an underground passage hidden beneath centuries of stone. A place where torches once flickered against carved symbols and sealed manuscripts that the world was never meant to see. The air is heavy, almost tangible, carrying the scent of parchment, iron, and secrecy so deliberate that even the Vatican labored to erase its traces. As you move deeper, every step reveals a past shaped, not by accident, but by intention. Built by men who understood that power flourishes in silence and collapses in confession. Here, in this dim threshold between what was recorded and what was buried, the truth of the Templars begins to take shape, not as legend, but as a suppressed narrative designed to challenge everything you have ever been told about faith, loyalty, and the fragile architecture of authority. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, an unsettling realization blooms. The Templars were far more than the clean, polished figures depicted in schoolbooks and romanticized stories. They were architects of influence, guardians of forbidden knowledge, and disciplined warriors molded by a code untouched by corruption. Their rise was not merely meteoric, it was transformative. They reshaped economies, negotiated with empires, mastered the navigation of continents, and guarded relics whose origins whispered of histories older than Christendom itself. Their discipline created an aura of invincibility. Their loyalty forged bonds stronger than royal blood, and their knowledge offered them a vantage point over both kings and clergy. It was this combination, power, secrecy, and autonomy, that made them indispensable to the church, yet simultaneously impossible to control. And from that tension emerged the unspoken truth. The Vatican was bound to the Templars by a pact forged, not in faith, but in necessity. As you advance through the hidden narrative, you begin to sense how deliberately every trace of this pact was concealed. Chronicles were edited, decrees rewritten, witnesses silenced, and vaults sealed under layers of ecclesiastical authority. But even the most meticulous attempts to erase history leave fractures, small, stubborn fragments that survive the flames. And it is through these fragments that the truth begins to rebuild itself. You start to see the outlines of a relationship built on mutual dependence, one in which the church relied on the Templars' reach, discipline, and access to forbidden territories, while the order benefited from Rome's legitimacy and protection. Yet alliances created in darkness often collapse in daylight, and as the Templars grew in wealth, knowledge, and influence, the church's admiration slowly hardened into fear. Rumors grew, suspicion spread, and the silent pact that had once secured Christendom began to unravel under the pressure of ambition and paranoia. By the time you reach the final pulse of this introduction, a single realization settles over you like a weight of cold stone. The Templars were not destroyed because they were heretics, traitors, or threats to the faith. They were destroyed because they knew too much. They carried secrets capable of unmaking kingdoms, destabilizing doctrines, and revealing the church's deepest vulnerabilities. Their silence outlived their bodies, their symbols outlived their institutions, and their mysteries endured through centuries of attempted erasure. And as you stand at the gateway of this forbidden history, the shadows whisper a truth the Vatican hoped you would never hear. The story you were given was never the story that happened. Here, the hidden narrative begins. As the final threads of this hidden history draw together, a profound realization settles over the narrative, like ancient dust returning to stone. The fall of the Knights Templar was never a simple clash of power, nor a righteous act of purification. It was the calculated erasure of a pact that threatened to reshape the spiritual and political architecture of the medieval world. The Vatican's campaign of accusations, trials, torture, and fire was not designed to dismantle a corrupt order, but to protect itself from the consequences of an alliance forged in secrecy and broken in fear. Yet, despite every effort to silence them, the truth endured. The Templars did not vanish, they transformed. Their symbols resurfaced across continents, their manuscripts reappeared in forgotten libraries, and their name became a whispered reminder that history rarely aligns with the stories the powerful choose to tell. In destroying the order, the church hoped to bury the past, but instead, it awakened a legacy it could never control. This legacy, born from both silence and sacrifice, grew stronger with each passing century. The Templars became a paradox, an extinguished order that refused to die, a suppressed truth that continued to resurface, a forbidden alliance that echoed louder the more Rome denied it. Their discipline, honor, and unwavering commitment to their code evolved into a mythology that transcended borders and generations. For some, they were protectors of ancient knowledge. For others, victims of political betrayal. And for many, a symbol of resistance against unchecked authority. Regardless of interpretation, one fact remains: the Templars captured the world's imagination not because of what they conquered, but because of what they represented. They stood at the intersection between faith and power, secrecy and revelation, silence and truth, and that paradox ensured their immortality. As you look back at the shadowed corridors of this forbidden narrative, another truth becomes unavoidable. The church's greatest mistake was believing it could control memory. Fire can destroy bodies, but not meaning. Torture can break confessions, but not conviction. And propaganda can distort chronicles, but not extinguish curiosity. The Templars' downfall revealed more about the Vatican's vulnerabilities than its strength. In trying to erase the order, the church inadvertently preserved it in the one place no authority can reach: the collective consciousness of humanity. Every unanswered question, every missing page, every forbidden symbol invites deeper investigation, ensuring the Templars remain an enduring force not just in history, but in imagination. And this is the essence of their immortal legacy, a legacy that outlived kings, inquisitions, and centuries of silence. The Knights Templar became more than an order. They became an idea, one that transcends time, hierarchy, and dogma. Their story continues to rise from the ashes of suppression, urging each generation to question the narratives crafted by those in power and to seek the truths buried beneath official history. In the end, the Vatican could destroy the men, but not the mystery. It could crush the order, but not the symbol. It could end the pact, but not the truth it tried to hide. The Templars remain, not as relics of the past, but as guardians of a legacy that refuses to die, a legacy that endures in every question that still lingers, every secret still whispered, and every shadow where forbidden truths continue to breathe. In the second layer of this hidden narrative, the machinery of power shifts from secret knowledge to something even more dangerous: financial dominion, while kings flaunted crowns and the church wielded doctrine. The Templars quietly constructed the most sophisticated economic network the medieval world had ever seen. Their system of coded deposits, long-distance credit notes, guarded treasuries, and fortified routes allowed them to move wealth across continents with a precision no monarchy could rival. Pilgrims trusted them with life savings. Merchants trusted them with entire caravans, and rulers humiliated by their own corrupt treasuries trusted them more than their ministers. The church publicly preached humility while privately depending on the order's financial expertise to sustain crusades, build fortifications, and secure debts it would never admit existed. In this unspoken arrangement, the Vatican gained access to funds that could not be traced back to Rome, while the Templars operated under the veil of ecclesiastical protection, expanding their influence without interference from jealous monarchs. But the deeper this financial alliance grew, the more the Vatican realized it had created a monster it could not restrain, an order whose wealth was untouchable, whose accounts were encrypted, and whose autonomy defied every principle of the Church's hierarchical control. As vaults filled and ledgers thickened, the Templars ceased to be servants and became indispensable partners, holding the kind of leverage that could unbalance kingdoms with a single denied loan. Rome pretended to lead, but the gold that sustained its expansion flowed quietly through Templar hands, and gold, in the medieval world, was a form of truth no doctrine could hide. The second fracture of this topic emerges not from coins or ledgers, but from the consequences of such power: political dependence. Kings who pledged loyalty to the church whispered confessions of fear in private chambers, admitting that the Templars' wealth could collapse their reigns overnight. Nobles facing bankruptcy were saved not by Rome's mercy, but by the order's calculated generosity. Even rival factions sought Templar mediation because their reputation for impartiality eclipsed the Church's notorious corruption. This placed the Vatican in a humiliating position. Authority remained spiritual in name, but the Templars held tangible influence that shaped borders, treaties, and successions. The Church depended on them to maintain geopolitical stability, even as it secretly resented the order's expanding reach. And the Templars, knowing the Church needed them, continued to reinforce their autonomy through disciplined secrecy and devastating efficiency. This created a silent tension that neither side dared acknowledge. Rome feared the day the order might outgrow its control, while the Templars feared the moment the Church would attempt to reclaim its dominance through manipulation or force. Beneath the outward appearance of unity, the alliance had begun to warp, twisting into a fragile balance of need, suspicion, and power, each side waiting for the inevitable moment when necessity would transform into betrayal. In the third layer of this concealed history, the true fracture between the Church and the Templars emerges not through gold or secrets, but through something far more unsettling: loyalty. While the Vatican ruled through authority, fear, and doctrine, the Knights Templar ruled through discipline, so absolute that it bordered on the supernatural. Their identity was forged through vows that severed ties to family, wealth, and personal ambition, creating warriors whose allegiance was not to kings or bishops, but exclusively to the order. Their silence became legendary, their unity unbreakable, and their obedience so precise that armies trembled before the mere sight of their formation. This psychological weapon, this ability to move as one mind, granted them a kind of influence no pope could replicate and no monarch could fully comprehend. The Church began to see the danger in a loyalty stronger than its own. For while Rome commanded through ritual and decree, the Templars commanded through respect earned in battle, sacrifice, and incorruptible discipline. They did not need threats to secure devotion, they embodied it. And as their reputation grew, so did the unsettling realization that a single Grand Master held more practical authority over tens of thousands of men than the Pope did over his entire clergy. But the Vatican's fear deepened when it recognized how this loyalty translated into something even more powerful: independence. Unlike the clergy, the Templars operated outside of political corruption, immune to bribery, untouched by dynastic disputes, and protected by a code that prioritized a mission over personal gain. Kings could be bought, bishops could be manipulated, but the Templars could not be controlled. This made them the most reliable force in Christendom and simultaneously the most threatening. Their unwavering unity allowed them to carry out missions Rome could never announce, guard relics the Church could never display, and negotiate with empires the Vatican publicly condemned. And with each silent victory, their moral authority grew, overshadowing the Church's declining credibility. People admired the Templars because they embodied what the Church claimed to be, but no longer represented: purity, sacrifice, and incorruptibility. The Vatican knew it was losing something far more important than power. It was losing the hearts of the faithful. And once spiritual loyalty begins to shift, no decree, no threat, no doctrine can reclaim it. Beneath the alliance that once seemed unshakable, a silent war of influence had begun, and the Church knew it could never coexist with a rival that inspired devotion deeper than its own. In the fourth layer of this forbidden narrative, the alliance between the Church and the Templars cracks even further as diplomacy becomes the battlefield that neither side expected. While the Vatican preached separation between the holy and the infidel, the Knights Templar operated in a reality far more complex, forging negotiations, truces, and covert agreements with factions the Church publicly condemned. In the Holy Land, they treated Muslim leaders not merely as enemies, but as strategic equals, respecting their intelligence, honoring their terms, and maintaining diplomatic channels Rome refused to acknowledge. This wasn't betrayal, it was survival. The Templars understood that wars are won not only with swords, but with conversation, strategy, and mutual respect. Their ability to communicate across cultural, religious, and political boundaries made them indispensable on the global stage. But this skill, admired by kings and feared by clergy, became the spark that ignited Rome's deepest insecurity. The Templars were operating in a world the Church could not control, building bridges the Vatican never sanctioned, and gathering information that could destabilize doctrines crafted in isolation from the realities of the battlefield. As these diplomatic victories expanded, a new and devastating realization dawned within the Vatican. The Templars were developing an influence that transcended borders and undermined ecclesiastical authority. Their treaties held more weight than papal decrees. Their negotiations secured peace where the Church's proclamations failed. Their reputation for honor attracted allies from every corner of the medieval world, including powerful families, merchants, and scholars who trusted the order far more than they trusted Rome. The Templars were becoming a transcontinental force, shaping the politics of Europe and the Middle East without needing permission from any throne or altar. This independence, built on credibility rather than doctrine, put the Church in an impossible position. If Rome admitted the Templars' diplomatic brilliance, it would expose its own limitations. If it opposed the order, it risked undermining the very stability it claimed to protect. And yet, beneath the facade of tolerance, resentment began to take root. The Church feared a world where Templar influence overshadowed papal authority, where loyalty to the order surpassed loyalty to Rome, and where the silent respect earned by Templar diplomacy could evolve into a parallel power system, one that made kings question whether the Vatican was still necessary at all. In the fifth and most revealing layer of this hidden pact, the Vatican's deepest fear takes shape not in documents, gold, or alliances, but in something far more untouchable: the mythology the Knights Templar unintentionally created. While the Church relied on doctrine to establish authority, the Templars built their influence on reputation, a reputation forged in silence, sacrifice, and a level of discipline that felt almost otherworldly. Their victories against impossible odds, their unwavering composure in battle, and their enigmatic rituals whispered about across continents began shaping a narrative the Church could not control. People spoke of Templars who rode into danger without hesitation, who protected pilgrims without payment, who lived with an honor that contrasted painfully with the corruption of clergy. In taverns, in markets, in the shadows of castles, the stories spread, tales of relics they guarded, secrets they carried, and knowledge they unearthed in lands scarred by ancient civilizations. The Vatican recognized too late that a narrative born from whispered admiration becomes stronger than any decree, because stories rooted in truth or in fear cannot be burned. The Templars were no longer just soldiers. They had become symbols, and symbols are indestructible. Yet what truly pushed the Church into panic was the evolution of this mythology into something Rome could never reclaim: moral authority. While bishops and cardinals were entangled in greed, politics, and scandal, the Templars stood as living embodiments of the virtues the Church preached but rarely practiced. They became the mirror that exposed Rome's flaws. The Vatican knew that it could silence men, but not ideas. It could destroy scrolls, but not belief. It could fabricate accusations, but not erase the loyalty earned by centuries of conduct beyond reproach. As their mystique grew, so did the suspicion. Perhaps the Templars held truths that challenged the foundation of Christian interpretation. Perhaps they guarded teachings that undermined papal supremacy. Perhaps they represented a version of faith that did not require Rome at all. This fear, subtle, poisonous, and escalating, ignited the final spark. The Church could tolerate many threats, but not a rival spirituality built on respect instead of authority, transparency instead of fear, and discipline instead of hierarchy. And so, beneath the surface of the medieval world, the mythology the Templars carried became the final justification for their destruction. To eliminate the order was to attempt to eliminate what they represented. But myths do not die with men, and the Vatican's desperate purge only ensured that the Templars' legend would outlive every throne, every decree, and every effort to silence their truth. As the final threads of this hidden history draw together, a profound realization settles over the narrative, like ancient dust returning to stone. The fall of the Knights Templar was never a simple clash of power, nor a righteous act of purification. It was the calculated erasure of a pact that threatened to reshape the spiritual and political architecture of the medieval world. The Vatican's campaign of accusations, trials, torture, and fire was not designed to dismantle a corrupt order, but to protect itself from the consequences of an alliance forged in secrecy and broken in fear. Yet, despite every effort to silence them, the truth endured. The Templars did not vanish, they transformed. Their symbols resurfaced across continents, their manuscripts reappeared in forgotten libraries, and their name became a whispered reminder that history rarely aligns with the stories the powerful choose to tell. In destroying the order, the Church hoped to bury the past, but instead, it awakened a legacy it could never control. This legacy, born from both silence and sacrifice, grew stronger with each passing century. The Templars became a paradox, an extinguished order that refused to die, a suppressed truth that continued to resurface, a forbidden alliance that echoed louder the more Rome denied it. Their discipline, honor, and unwavering commitment to their code evolved into a mythology that transcended borders and generations. For some, they were protectors of ancient knowledge. For others, victims of political betrayal. And for many, a symbol of resistance against unchecked authority, regardless of interpretation. One fact remains: the Templars captured the world's imagination not because of what they conquered, but because of what they represented. They stood at the intersection between faith and power, secrecy and revelation, silence and truth, and that paradox ensured their immortality. As you look back at the shadowed corridors of this forbidden narrative, another truth becomes unavoidable. The Church's greatest mistake was believing it could control memory. Fire can destroy bodies, but not meaning. Torture can break confessions, but not conviction. And propaganda can distort chronicles, but not extinguish curiosity. The Templars' downfall revealed more about the Vatican's vulnerabilities than its strength. In trying to erase the order, the Church inadvertently preserved it in the one place no authority can reach: the collective consciousness of humanity. Every unanswered question, every missing page, every forbidden symbol invites deeper investigation, ensuring the Templars remain an enduring force not just in history, but in imagination. And this is the essence of their immortal legacy, a legacy that outlived kings, inquisitions, and centuries of silence. The Knights Templar became more than an order. They became an idea, one that transcends time, hierarchy, and dogma. Their story continues to rise from the ashes of suppression, urging each generation to question the narratives crafted by those in power and to seek the truths buried beneath official history. In the end, the Vatican could destroy the men, but not the mystery. It could crush the order, but not the symbol. It could end the pact, but not the truth it tried to hide. The Templars remain, not as relics of the past, but as guardians of a legacy that refuses to die, a legacy that endures in every question that still lingers, every secret still whispered, and every shadow where forbidden truths continue to breathe. If this journey into the forbidden alliance between the Vatican and the Knights Templar awakens something in you, a question, a spark of curiosity, or the sense that history hides far more than it reveals, then don't let the story end here. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share your thoughts in the comments so we can continue uncovering the truths buried beneath centuries of silence. Your engagement is the force that keeps these hidden narratives alive, pushing us deeper into the shadows where the most powerful secrets still wait to be revealed.